Oh, right.
Hello, kitty. Hey, good morning, everyone. We are here in Bo-Kaap, which is an area that originated with the slaves from Malaysia and other surrounding areas within Africa. And at the time, back in the 1700s, these properties were provided to the slaves and they were all painted white. In years to come, they were able to actually purchase these properties, and as a result, they've painted them extremely bright colors, which you will see shortly when we turn around and start walking through this neighborhood, to represent the freedom which they achieved at that time. So it's a very historical area here in Cape Town. I'm personally really looking forward to it. The colors are amazing. You could Instagram Bo-Kaap and see hundreds and hundreds of pictures of this area. It is an Instagram-worthy location, unfortunately, which is probably why so many people come to this area. So stay tuned, and we were going to participate in a walking tour shortly. It looks like there's a few other guests that are waiting for our guide, and we'll take you on this journey with us.
I'm from the far more east of South Africa, a very small town which is called Kokstad, 2 hours away from the city of Durban. I moved to Cape Town in the year 2018 to complete my studies, which was in sports management.
Sports management.
Sports management. It's a lot more far for people from Durban side to come to Cape Town. It was about a 22-hour drive coming by. I used the bus. It was a different culture, of course. Similar cultures for people from Durban is to go to Johannesburg. I mean, people speak Zulu, people speak English in Johannesburg. Similar cultures. But when I came to Cape Town, it was completely different. Now, not so much to an extent whereby it got me so confused out of life, because I come from a very diverse household as well. Where I speak languages of Afrikaans, Zulu, Xhosa as well, and English, of course, which is taught in schools. And from my background and from where I grew up, I got to learn Setswana as well. So I had a bit of everything. But of course, when you move to in South Africa, if the language is the same, the accent normally changes. A bit of slang which people get in there. It was definitely more expensive moving to Cape Town. Double the amount I would pay back at home. So I came by. I studied sports management. 2018, 2020 we had COVID. I went back home. I explored into photography. I got myself a camera, started out taking pictures. 2021 I got a job in photography. So I was like a freelancer, joined the group, still part of the group, so I get to take photo shoots around Bo-Kaap, the waterfront, like all the touristic places, where I get to meet all these people, from all over the world, and just the stories which I got to hear from these people were very interesting. So it's like, okay, why not? 2022 I completed a tour guiding course, which was now a different ball game. Now you were with groups of 6 people, 10 people, 15 people, and you got to share with these people, just the life in South Africa, to an extent where I didn't really see it as a job. I saw it as a platform to understand oneself, to try and dig deeper as to what the regions are, how South Africa is, what is South Africa actually. So for me, it's part of a journey where it's more of like learning and also unlearning from our past, which we were taught in our households, of how life is on the outside. When we come out, it's completely different, So it's unlearning all of that, that's a bit of myself in a nutshell. I'll get to share a lot more as we move into the neighborhood. And you guys are more than welcome to ask questions, and feel free.
So like so many people, ourselves included, you've kind of abandoned the sports management initial career, or is that just on hold? Because I've got 3 diplomas behind me, and Mike is the same, where his original uni course he really doesn't participate in. He's in a different business now.
So for me, I get to do it as an morning. Okay. So I get to do it I get to do it as an after school program, neighborhood. It's not just the colors in the area, it's more than the colors. There's a community living here, a community which I believe is a very peaceful community, a very loving and always trying to understand, but a community which is also very proud of their history, which sadly the history is fading away, due to all the changes which are happening in Cape Town, with the gentrification, which is not only a South African issue but a worldwide issue. The popular areas, people come through, it changes, the houses changes and becomes more of a commercial space. But the history of these homes actually will draw us back to the 1600s. The 1600s, 1652 is when we had the first arrival of the Dutch into the Cape, the Dutch East India Company, which made their arrival, it was more of a refreshment stop. One of the reasons why the Dutch East India Company were even in the Cape was trying to get to East India. This is in the times of your pepper, cinnamon, more precious than your gold. This is where every sailor was trying to get out to East India. The Portuguese were the first ones who made it successfully, which was in 1488. They sailed through. They even changed the name to the Cape of Good Hope, which is today. But back then it was called the Cape of Storms, because no sailor could make it through because of the two oceans which meet, the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. So there was quite a turbulence. It still is, with the two oceans which meet. So these guys make it successfully to East India. They go back to Europe, they trade, they make a lot of profits. This is when the Dutch then decide, okay, this is not so convenient for us. We need to find our ways to get our own spices so we could make more profits. So they sail by. When they sail into the Cape, they find what we call the indigenous people, which was called the Khoi and the San. The Khoi and the Khoi San. These were two different tribe groups who had moved down from southern Africa, that lived in the Cape for over 100,000 years. These guys were very fond of rain, so they would move from place to place in the Cape. So the Dutch would come by and there was a trade. You give us you give us food, we give you what you need. Yeah, it's a form of exchange, we exchange. But sadly to say, in 1659 we then witnessed the first war against the indigenous people. We then witnessed the first war against the indigenous people and the Dutch, which happened in the Cape, which resulted in a colonization of oil and the Dutch being present in the Cape for plus minus 150 years, which was a very long time. With that being said, the Dutch of course had murdered some of the indigenous people. Many of them were being forced to be slaves. This is when the Dutch then also decide to bring in slaves from places like Indonesia, Malaysia, and some other parts of Africa, Angola, Madagascar, Mauritius. This is around in the times of the 1760s. Now, when we look into the Bo-Kaap neighborhood, this was more of a working class neighborhood, because this is where freed slaves had lived in these homes which we have today, and these were called huurhuises, which means rental homes. So these were homes owned by the Dutch, which they had rented out to the freed slaves, and these freed slaves of course had a skill. You had to have something so you could pay off your rent. But back in these years of the 1760s, the houses were not painted in any color. It was just a white and beige neighborhood. So these freed slaves were clothing designers, shoemakers. Some of them were even builders and musicians living in these houses. So you would design a suit. You would design a suit for the Dutchman, and you would sell it off, or design a shoe, sell it off to him. So you could make money and pay that off, which was in a way of, the same money which you make goes back to rent. So it was no gain at all for yourself. Okay, you got to live in the neighborhood. So with the houses painted white and beige, these are typical Dutch colors. You use these colors to reflect the sun, keep the insides cooler. Back in those days, there was no air conditioning, so they were quite strategic. The colors which they had used in the neighborhood, which is very much the common color. You go out to the winelands, they use green, white. Some parts of the Netherlands as well, you get to see these colors as well, which are used in the neighborhood. But then we then heard of the English occupation as well, which is now in 1806. That was their second occupation, coming into the Cape. When the English came into the Cape, there were some reliefs, or they had came in the name of we're coming to save the indigenous people in 1806. And we saw some reliefs happening. We saw slavery also fading away in the times of the 1830s. the 1830s, slavery slightly being abolished. And when that happened, some of the slaves then gained ownership of the homes which you have in the neighborhood. And gaining ownership for them meant a painting over the houses, as a symbol of freedom to them, but also others using these colors to identify each other as to what products you were selling in a certain household. Maybe you had a greenhouse, maybe you sold vegetables. Orange house, maybe you sold fruits, clothing. So these colors were also used for that. But boldly also painting when Nelson Mandela was also president now and people approaching him to paint over their homes. Because when looking back at these times of the 1900s as well, where people of color were not allowed to express themselves in any form of art, music, any freedom of expression was restricted. So they approached the great man Nelson Mandela and asked him if they could paint over their homes. People painted. He allowed them. Was like, yes, why not? So they paint over their homes, and it becomes this colorful neighborhood, which we have today, which is the beautiful colors of Bo-Kaap. Now, the name Bo-Kaap itself means above the cape, or up the cape. So Bo meaning up, Kaap meaning cape. Local people would normally pronounce it as Bo-Kaap, because it's found right at the footslopes of a mountain we call Signal Hill, where people go to for paragliding. Standing at the lower parts of the city center, this is up the cape, up the slope. Okay. So we're going to move on and get to understand as to why the Dutch had approached this architectural style which we have in the neighborhood, which is a mixture of Cape Dutch and Georgian. Because a typical Cape Dutch building is more of a circular shape from the top, which is what we see out in the winelands quite a lot. But there's a different approach in this neighborhood, and I'll get to share as to why that is so. But yeah, we're going to move on, and I'll give you guys some time to also take some pictures as well. Rejuvenated, looking really nice. So a number of people have repainted over their homes. The uncle who lives here, so we refer to people who are older than, if someone is older than myself, and I will refer to that person as uncle or auntie. Even if it's not my auntie or uncle. That is everyone out on the street. The uncle who lives here has repainted his home, including the pink house up in there as well.
There is certainly a lot of tourists around doing their Instagram photos.
Can you take our picture in front of here?
Because this is a Muslim neighborhood, there is a big push here and some rallies here to be able to unite Palestine. So they're definitely pro-Palestine here. So these are heritage buildings. You can't change them. You can't make them any taller than this. And homes in this area are really quite expensive. They can go for about 7 million rand. But you would also lose your privacy because you've got tourists around you all the time. Nobody's using these patios anymore because you've got tourists outside taking Instagram photos.
Style was approached, or this flat roof, is because of the weather conditions, which are quite different from out in the winelands compared to the city center. Out in the winelands, you have a more circular shape from the top because of rain. It's high rainfall. The Dutch had approached that style so that they avoid having to repair their roofs. But this is mostly done for the winds which we call the southeasterly winds, which is called the Cape Doctor. Very strong wind. It goes down from Table Mountain. You've got to pray your house is stable if that wind comes by. So they approach a more of a flat surface roof to keep the structures around it quite strong. And as I've mentioned, it's heritage homes, with one of the first and oldest buildings still standing as a museum today. Right down over there. With the north side of home this way, over here, these stones or bricks.
The Bo-Kaap neighborhood is actually a lot smaller than we thought. And soon we are just walking around the nearby downtown Cape Town area.
Services. So there's still a service here. It was designed by the British man called Sir Herbert Baker. He's very much well known for his number of buildings which he has around the city of Cape Town. This church believes very much in the community, the people, Hence it has its doors open from Mondays to Sundays for people to come in, have a sit, meditate, have a cup of coffee and just enjoy yourself, you know. So you also have nurses which is behind here who give out like therapy and blood tests, quite a number of things. You know, you come through, you play the piano, you want to sit, meditate, so it's all allowed to that, you know. Many churches around the world are actually very much of a Gothic style. But this one has a mixture of neoclassical, which is more the walls which goes all the way up, elongated walls which is more dramatic. Way over here, you see there's a very important square in the city centre. It's called Church Square. This is where political activities took place. This is where meetings are also held.
Our guide was explaining that if you see people with their front teeth missing in Cape Town, it's actually a symbol of anti-slavery. Even today, people will do that intentionally, because back in the day of slavery, they would remove their front teeth so that they didn't look healthy enough to become a slave, and they would be rejected. How long ago was slavery abolished here?
This is around about in the 1830s, 1834, 5, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
18 square.
Oh yeah.
He is painted over by an artist around mental issues which a lot of young men face. Hence you don't have the face which is shown out there. And then the mouth actually showing you the expression of how the boy feels. You know? You can never hide it away. You know, with society telling man that you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't share how much you feel, just man up. And there we can see this boy actually sad, you know, where we can see the expression with the statement which he has of our gentle hearts feel much and know little, you know, with the dead bird in his hand, saying that you're never on your own. There's always someone out there to hear what you have to say, you know. So remember now, we had the 1950s, which was the segregation era in South Africa, which was more of the city being meant for white people, further out of the city, colored people, and then further away, black people. So only in 1966 did we then see the Group Areas Act being practiced in the areas of District 6. So this was the effect of the 1950s being practiced now in 1966 in the area of District 6. So the forced removals was all about the city centre and not being meant for people of colour. So these were people of colour being forcefully removed out of the city centre, which is this area of District 6. Moved out to the Cape Flats, moved out to the townships, and then the city being meant for the white people. Caught on the spot, I don't know what to say. Well, greetings to everyone. My name is Terrence, and yeah, I'm a tour guide based in Cape Town, all the way from Durban. And yeah, part of my tours is just aimed at bringing identity and understanding to the present times of the city of Cape Town, South Africa itself. So yeah, one of the platforms which you guys can find me on is on Instagram _TR_medias1. That's one of my pages on Instagram. So yeah, feel free to pop by a DM, message, and yeah, let's connect and see what we can do. And just have fun and explore the city of Cape Town. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, it's good.